All right. For anyone who's listening or listens in the future, today is Thursday, March 7th, a work session with Anthony Carr, Village Engineer and Superintendent of Public Works, talking about the draft DPW budget. We're going to start here with the capital, and I will share my screen. Get to the right page. Here we go. Okay.
All right. Eric and Mr. Mayor, where would you like to start in any particular order with the projects? Is there any, I guess we could start really at the, I guess we could take it at the top.
I think that's right.
All right. So the Manville Road Corridor Improvements Project, obviously, as you know, is underway. I'm sure most of you, or at least some, have seen the e-blast that was sent out today about the project status. But most of this money is obviously, or all of it, I should say, is remaining in fiscal year 2024, because it is believed that the project will be completed within that time frame. PCI is returning back March 18th to finish the remaining site work. That'll take approximately until early May, and then hopefully before June, they expect to have final paving completed along Manville, the Manville corridor and up Memorial Plaza. So again, so that's a good thing. And Eric, obviously, if there's, it's hard to tell now with weather and material, any remaining material lead time, but there might be a small chance that number might bleed into fiscal year 25, but it's at this point, it's unlikely.
All right, not for discussion tonight, but at some point we'll have to consider where the project is and what we do about the Memorial Day ceremony.
Yeah.
Likely can't do it the way we normally do it. So whatever, we'll work that out later. Okay.
Okay. The Civic Space project is moving along very nicely. We anticipate having bids out by April 19th, with bids due back, I believe, on June 4th. So we'll know where we stand with that project, but we're still very comfortable in speaking with the consultants, Wagner Hotskin, the main consultant, or the primary consultant, also the landscape architects. They're working on preparing a finalized or final construction cost estimate. But again, we've had many discussions along the way, and as we've, approaching the 100% construction document level, the project team, consultant, and the village are very comfortable that this will be $600,000 or less project, and all the work will be completed within approximately 3 months. So it'll span over one fiscal year. And again, Eric, we might want to slide that over to fiscal year 2025, unless you want to have the money in hand prior to award, which would likely happen in June anyway. The award would likely happen in June, pending, obviously, no unforeseen issues with the project.
So, are you thinking, Eric, that we would ban that in 2020?
Well, we have a bond authorization for up to $700,000, so might ban that
before the end of May.
Probably not before the end of May, but we'll
so
take
whatever.
a look at that. And we have $450,000 in grant funding reimbursable, so
right.
We would ban it initially and then bond or pay off the balance.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
Again, that project is very well on its way for the civic space, and we could share the plans, in the coming weeks. But bidding will be advertisement for contract. The bid will be April 19th, same day as the pool reconstruction project. But I will not take this out of order. The third project, the Pleasant Village Estate sidewalk. That's the construction of approximately 1,000 linear feet of new concrete sidewalk and curb from Pierce Drive to Springfield Estates. That entrance, the curb cut. And then that spans, again, about a quarter mile. There'll be guide rail of about 300 feet of the 950 that'll span pretty much in front of the embankment or the steep slope that parallels and fronts Pleasant Village Estates, the actual subdivision on the bottom of the hill. The state was very adamant. New York State DOT was very adamant back in 2013 about having a guide rail there for pedestrian safety and where the guide rail was to be located. So we've worked closely with the DOT. We have a consultant on board, Ralph Mastromonaco, PC. They did the original design plans that were approved for the sidewalk back in 2013. So made sense to continue using them as the engineer of record. We've expanded the 2013 design by a few hundred feet. The original design did not go all the way to Pierce Drive, and it did not go all the way to Springfield Estates. So it makes sense to close the gap, have it go from the intersection of Pierce Drive, then to Springfield Estates. That project is currently with the DOT for review and approval for a highway work permit. The drawings are approximately 90% construction level. I mean, they're to the point where I've worked with the consultant and you can build off them with no issue. And we expect to go out to bid for that. I believe on the calendar invite I sent out was in July, early July, July 2nd, I believe, for a 4-week bid period. So we'll get bids back end of July, and then hopefully award or make a recommendation to award to the board in the first meeting in August. So that's exciting.
Yep.
I know that was a project that's been on the books for over a decade, so it's nice to see the connectivity piece of it moving forward. Fourth project, excuse me, certainly not the probably the biggest one on the board. The pool reconstruction project will also be bid out on April 19th. We are going through regulatory approvals right now. We still haven't received comments back from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and the New York State DEC, and we're wrapping up with the Department of Health for a final but small round of comments. Again, that permitting is kind of happening concurrently with the bid process, and I understand, Mayor, that you and the board and the administrator, rather than have a consultant prepare another cost estimate or a third-party estimator prepare an estimate, we want to look at real numbers and make it the best decision.
Might as well. We're this far in, we're this close.
Agreed.
Let's find out what the real world says.
Agreed. So the consultants and the team, every 2 weeks I meet with them. We go over everything in detail, and there is nothing to lead us to think anything differently that this project will be over $6 million. Now, of course, we can't predict what the contractor's 8-ball is going to say, but based on their experience and Robert DeBruin and Stephen Kunis have been doing pools for a very long time, for decades, they're very confident that we will fall at or below that number. So that number stands for fiscal year 2025.
Hopefully below, yes. So
Yes. Fingers crossed. But like I said, we value engineered the project. We've taken out stuff. We've changed materials. Again, not to the detriment of the project, because I think the board and Eric knows now that I don't really cheap out on things, and I like to see better quality go in. But there were opportunities where we were able to reduce some of the site work, some of the drainage, and we shaved off probably about $250,000 to $200,000 off the project. At this point, there's really nothing else that we can do other than not put the pool in that would value engineer the project. So we have looked at that, but we're excited. I'll send out a bunch of an email with a few of these projects that have the milestone dates as far as when we're going to advertise, when bids are due, and then obviously when it will likely be before your board for recommendation from DPW. So I'll summarize all that in a separate cover. DPW, this is our annual paving program. We have 6 roads slated for this year. My predecessor did a good job with his pavement management program. Of course, I also analyzed the roads and looked at it too, and kind of did an assessment. And I don't disagree with basically what he had for the 5-year schedule. We made some tweaks and revisions based on input from Mike Ferguson and the road maintenance foreman and my own visualization. But for the most part, it's pretty straightforward. We have $350,000 budgeted every year. We get back from the state as long as we reimburse and the expenses are eligible, which they are. We get about $225,000 through 4 different funding sources from the state: CHIPS, extreme weather recovery, pothole preservation, and there was CHIPS, EWR, POP, and Pave New York. Thank you. So we get 225, but we have 6 roads slated. I could share that road list, and I'll also put the map up on the website so people can see now that it's finalized. We do plan on going out to bid for that late April. We'll get the pool and the civic space project out April 19th, and likely paving will be end of April, early May. So there'll be a lot of projects going out to bid and hopefully awarded and hopefully constructed this summer and fall. A lot of stuff going on. I'll share the road list, but basically they're all the roads off of Pierce Drive. So I believe Onderdonk, Cedar Lane, Brentwood, just to name a few, Hillside. So that I forgot there's 2 other road segments, but those are Dogwood, and then there's a 6th one. But those are basically the streets.
How much of Cedar is in the village?
How much of Cedar is in the village?
I mean, we don't have to deal with that now. We've got lots to do, so let's keep rolling.
Okay.
We can dig. Yeah.
Okay. Nanny Higgin retaining wall project. but I will get you an answer on that following the meeting, Mayor. The Nanahagan Brick Wall project, the consultant who I just spoke to earlier this week, we were going to have a progress meeting. We did not, because they're going to be sending us a draft technical memorandum, which will summarize their findings of the structural evaluation of the second wall, basically from the footbridge around the bend at the PCTV site, all the way down to basically the woods by Broadway. In general, I didn't see the report yet. As soon as I get it, I'll share it. It'll be a color-coded map that basically scores the wall from 1 to 5, 5 being the best, 1 being the worst. And I will tell you, there was no wall segment from what the consultant told me that scored higher than a 2. And that was based on their structural evaluation. Again, that was from Broadway all the way up to the PCTV bridge. Now, we're not suggesting doing all 1,000 plus linear feet, which is why we cut the scope back initially when we went out for the RFP, which was about 500 linear feet. However, they have summarized, and again, didn't see the report, this is just verbal. They have prioritized the areas from utmost importance. They're all priority. So I don't want to give the misconception that low priority means we don't need to touch the wall, but there's a high, medium, and low, and they're about 200 linear feet each. So that's going to be about 600 linear feet of wall. We estimated for RFP and construction costs about 500, so it's still in the wheelhouse. It's still pretty close. But they're going to categorize the walls. They're going to be pictures, very easy for all of us to understand. As soon as I get that draft report, I will forward it to the board. But the 1.5 here, and the administrator, but the 1.5 covers the construction cost and also the soft cost of the engineering cost.
Okay.
And we anticipate construction for that. We're just going to start design in the upcoming weeks. We're in March. Potentially, we can start in the fall, but it's likely going to be the spring. Again, that's based on Army Corps permitting. Certainly, we can go out to bid and get numbers, but since we're in the waterway and there's a lot of things going on, we may not want to do that because we don't know the timeline for the state and the feds yet. I anticipate by the summertime we'll have a permitting package in, and that permitting could take 6 months. So it may start in the fall if it's expedited, but I would likely bank on the spring of 2025 for this project to start. And again, this project will last this will be about a maybe 3 to 6 month project, depending on how much of the wall is really the issue. But I would actually, let me back up. I'd say 4 to 6 months all in. So Nanahagan Wall Brook, okay. Clark Street drainage. I'm pleased to say that in support from the mayor and the board and Eric, I have finished the design for Clark Street drainage. The drawings are 99% done. Just the 1% I want to do a final review. Specs are finished. The bid form, which is what the contractor uses to price the job, that's finished as well too. The only 2 outstanding items we have left are, I'd like to coordinate with Con Edison because we have a conflict with two of the 7 gas services that are on Clark Street closer to Bedford. So they need to move them in advance of the project. The main is fine. I try to work around that, and there's things we did with this project to not interfere with their gas main, although they are required by the Public Service Commission to move their utility for the municipality for improvements. However, in the interest of time and trying to work collaboratively, there's just a few things I want them to look at more for the service line side, which is from the house to the main. So I want to send them the plans. They haven't gotten back to me yet for where I need to upload them to, waiting on that. And then we'll have to get a county road permit since part of the work, i.e. replacing a catch basin at the corner of Bedford and Clark Street, will be in the county right away. That's no problem. Have good relationships with the county. Permit should be very easy to obtain. And I finished building the job with the bid form. Again, trying to go quick. I know we have a whole menu here, but based on initial estimates, without locking ourselves into a number, since we're on public broadcast, I would say that this job would fall somewhere between $525,000 and $575,000. So $600,000 is more than enough. There's no soft cost because this was done in-house, but we're 99% of the way there. And I will circulate a set of the 17 sheet drawings to the mayor and board and you, Eric, just to see the progress. But it's there, and the improvements will certainly provide drainage now on Clark Street. Certainly resolve the drainage on the fields, and then we're also going to install a partial underdrain system on the northeast corner of the fields too, to help with some of the kind of localized soggy conditions, and maybe for future expansion if you want to put an underdrain system on the other side closer to Manville. So that's good. We're way ahead of schedule on that, and that project. I sent out a lot of calendar invites to Eric and staff for all the projects that are going out, but Clark Street will likely be bid out in July, with bids back and for recommendation of award to the board, first meeting in August, so the contractor could start in September. And typically with drainage, you start downstream first, makes sense, right? So they would start at Bedford Road, work up Clark Street, go into the parking lot, and then save the drainage work within the grass field for last. And that's because I know that there's programming going on around November 1st. So the recreation superintendent basically said, hey, can you work this so that it's not going to impact the field until as late as you can in the year? And we're comfortable with the contractor getting to the field around November 1st, since really there's no pavement. It's an easy dig, very straightforward installation, and they could probably finish the work in 2 to 3 weeks on the field. So that's the general gist of the Clark Street project. No hiccups. We've tried to, we had good survey information from Dan Merritt. I went out, verified a few things with staff. So there'll be very little unforeseen conditions encountered for the project. Moving on to the fleet rolling stock program, which I know is something that Eric has introduced since he's been here, and something that we expanded on since I've been here too. We have a vehicle inventory list. I took that list, worked with Mike Ferguson, the road maintenance foreman, and the fleet foreman, and said, okay, well, let's assign capital cost and replacement years to it. And sure enough, they actually had that information already. We kind of had to shuffle things around and refine it, but we actually had a rolling stock program and a schedule already implemented and already constructed, which I was very pleased to see. So starting with fiscal year 25, I know we're in DPW, but I just want to slide down to the water fund. So vehicle number 4 for water right now is a 2008 Ford 150 Ranger. It's a pickup truck. That truck takes fuel to fuel up our diesel generator up at the pump house at the water storage tank site. It is used obviously by the water foreman and for many of other tasks. But that truck, the computer or the diagnostics in it has started to fail. They do not have that computer anymore. It's discontinued, it's obsolete, and it's very hard and difficult. And we're still trying to look for a backup computer in the case that the computer or the brain of the car eventually fails. Again, 2008, yeah, okay, not super old, but there's a severe amount of corrosion on the frame and on the other carriage. It's starting to look a little bit like a Fred Flintstone car with the floorboards rotting out. It's hitting that point. It's hitting that point where the same thing with the parks foreman, right? It was the same deal with his vehicle, but we're concerned that a new computer would cost several $1,000s if we even find one, and there's no guarantee that computer would last because they don't give you any guarantees off the lot. So we recently replaced vehicles 3 and 5 for the water department, and we replaced them with 2 Dodge 1500 Ram vans. So they're good to go there. This would be
those look great.
They're dynamite. The staff has used them since I've been here on numerous water main. I won't say the B word, but on at least on the handful I've been on, they've used the van to keep it clean. There's tons of tools in there. They love them. So those vans are done. I know that was a big initiative too with Eric working with my predecessor and the department before I got here. But vehicle number 4 is on the fritz. And if it wasn't, I wouldn't be asking for it if it wasn't warranted. So I
understand, yeah.
That's vehicle number 4. 65.
Can we hold there? Can we, I understand it may be a little bit more in the short term, but I think it would pay out to get a F-150 Lightning to replace that, another electric vehicle.
Yes, we're on board with it, and that $65,000 would cover an electric vehicle similar to the parks foreman, the Lightning. Yes.
Oh, great.
Good.
Yep, that's the plan. We have. Look, I'm a big fan of the electrical vehicles and the equipment, depending on what it is. There's some of the technologies that are not there yet with the electric equipment. They haven't been around long enough. Leaf blowers are pretty good. The trucks, yes, they're there. They've been there for quite a bit. Things like street sweepers, they're mega expensive, probably close to the $800,000 realm, and they're still not as effective, at least from the white papers I read and from colleagues who have tried them.
The demo for the electric street sweeper was really impressive. Did you see that one that they brought? I'm sure it's super expensive, but
yeah, 800. It's about 800, anywhere from $600,000 to $800,000. But
it's very quiet too.
Yeah, they say, there's, again, from the stuff I've read and some of the demos I've seen, not at DPW, there's still some questions as to how much it could actually suck up and keep. And again, the technology is fairly new. Definitely something to look at, but just for frame of reference, a traditional street sweeper is maybe 250 to 350, and the electric is about 750 to 800.
Yeah. No, it's a huge difference.
Yeah,
This particular company is the only thing they make. I think they're a Scandinavian country, and they have a very specific way that they use the batteries and stuff. I can't remember. Do you remember, Eric, what the name of the company was?
No.
I'd be curious to look it up. Not just to have on the radar.
All right, so a deeper discussion to come. Let's keep rolling here because we're on a schedule.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
No problem. No problem. So I just,
the point here is to come up with a list of things we need to dig into deeper on, right?
yes, but I just, okay, so vehicle number 4 is good. I'll pop back up now to the other vehicles. Vehicle number 12, which is the sister or brother vehicle to truck number 24, which the board and Eric supported and the board approved, which will be coming very, very, very soon. We have a new Freightliner, the new truck 24. The body and the chassis are done. They're actually putting the lights on and working out some last minute things, probably in the next 2 to 4 weeks. We'll have the new truck number 24. I'll let Eric know. And if anybody wants to come see it, certainly can. Freightliners are great trucks. They're just as good as Mack, but you're not paying for the Mack name. But in any case, the old truck 24 and the current truck 12 were both 2001 internationals. They've seen better days. We've had transmission problems, hydraulic problems. This is a big truck. Currently it's a 6-wheeler. We probably replace it with a 10-wheeler, which is what the new truck 24 is. What's the difference? It could hold more material and it's a little bit heavy. So that's the main difference, but same function: snow plow, dump truck, salter. It would be the works. But again, we got them at the same time. And that's the one thing I've learned in White Plains and Norwalk too, is inheriting a fleet where at one time it was new. When you buy vehicles all at the same time and they're not staggered or rolling, well, you know what happens, right? At year 10, now you have 5 vehicles that are all 10 years old and they all have varying problems. So that's typically why you don't do that. And you do what we're doing now, which is the rolling stock. So that's the request, Mayor and Board. That's an out year though. That's fiscal year 2027. Could it be 300? Maybe.
Right.
That's an out year, but that's an important truck. And again, it would be the brother sister tandem to the old International, and now you'd have 2 Freightliners. That's fiscal year 27. Going down to vehicle number 31. I'm sure you probably heard it, the sewer truck. I know my predecessor and my staff have made many well-deserved pitches for a vac truck. I am a big proponent of a vac truck. I've always had them. They're multi-use. I'm not going to chew up the board's time. We all know it's safer, it's faster. You don't have to wait for a dig safe mark out. You could start earlier. And again, it's just more efficient, and you could do a lot of different things with it. Clean out catch basins, clean out sewers. Obviously you chlorinate the nozzle. You don't put the same thing in there, but there's ways to clean that properly. But the main reason is too that our current sewer truck has a 1/2-inch nozzle. It's small, it's antiquated. I think it only goes 500 feet. A lot of the newer nozzles are 2 inches. They go 1,000 feet. They have more PSI, more flow, as you can probably understand and know that that's better cleaning for our maintenance for our sewers and helps remove grease. Having a 1/2-inch nozzle is no different than filling up a sanitary sewer pipe with Crisco and taking your pointer finger in it and just kind of poking holes in it. And eventually you get enough flow through it to kind of get the constriction out. But that's kind of what it's like. And having a 1/2-inch nozzle is like bringing a knife to a gunfight type of deal. But I also understand the sensitivity that it's a very expensive piece of equipment. A standard combo Vactor truck where it cleans and it sucks and it does all the other things is about $500,000. We did apply for a grant. Excuse me, I'm just trying to go fast in the interest of time. So please stop me or I'll follow up with any questions afterwards. We did apply for a New York State DEC WQIP grant that we did not get for the sewer truck. It would have been a $325,000 grant from the state, and then we'd have to put the difference in, which would be about $175,000. So that's where this 200 comes from. And our thought was, after speaking with Eric and kind of going through the process and understanding the pulse of the board, I've tasked the department and Mike Ferguson with finding a used, whatever brand, Vactor, great brand, Vac On, Vac All, they're all great. A reasonably decent used Vactor truck, which we believe we could find for $200,000. We haven't found it yet, but we have colleagues and people in other states that have posted things and have provided us literature that they have received a very nice vac truck used for half the price of a normal one. So we know it exists. Vendors have told us they're a little hesitant to try to give us the used one because we asked them, hey, well, could we buy your demo truck off you? And they're like, well, they give us the whole thing because they want us to buy a new one. But in either case, that would be fiscal year 2026. Not asking for 500. I'm not going to come back before the board to ask for the full amount for a new back truck. But with the $200,000, give or take, I believe that we could find a functional, useful back truck that far surpasses the capabilities of the 1994 F-350.
Great.
And again, this sewer truck here only does sewer, so you can't clean out catch basins. It doesn't have that big hose in the front where you can suck out trenches for water main breaks. I said the B word, other issues too. Like it's a combo. So this is just a nozzle that sprays a really hard pressurized amount of water and cuts through basically Crisco and grease. So the combo truck is well worth it. Every fleet typically has one, but again, depends on the size of the fleet and the needs of the municipality. Second, right after this is a new initiative. State DEC, SPEEDs, State Pollutant Discharge Elimination System, MS4, short for Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System. There's 4 S's, that's why they put 4. It's basically your stormwater compliance. The new permit was issued by the state effective January 3rd, 2024. As you can imagine, the requirements became more stringent as far as public outreach, putting together a new stormwater maintenance plan, which will be a big book and a binder and also available in PDF for the public to read and input and comment on. And there's also a component too where there's going to be mapping involved. We have some storm sewer mapping done. It'll pass a straight face test for a while, but we don't have a GIS database and we don't have other mapping components that we're going to need basically at year 1 and year 3 and year 5. So the DEC understands the municipalities can't do everything they're asking for in one shot. So they've basically gave us a milestone to hit, like after 6 months. So now you got to start submitting every October and April self-certification saying that, yeah, we're working towards the goals for year 1. And obviously, you know why they're doing that, because when you don't, there could be a violation or some kind of administrative action. But the MS4 requirements have gotten more complex. We have coverage on the new permit. I prepared the electronic NOI. I know, Mayor, you signed it. Eric initiated that between you and the board. So we're covered. We're covered underneath the new permit, but now all the fun stuff comes with it. So in order to maintain compliance and avoid a notice of violation or a consent order with the state DEC, I've worked with Insight Engineering to develop kind of a conceptual preliminary cost estimate. And, based on the needs of what you have to do in year 1, year 3, it was decided what we know today that $25,000 would be more than ample for the upcoming year to develop that stormwater plan. And then the remaining $75,000 would be put towards mapping, updating the plan, because you have to do it annually, public outreach, there's new requirements for that. So it's $100,000, to be honest with you. I ground truthed it off 2 consultants, but I'm working closely with Insight on this, who will likely be working on the project. And they said $100,000 is more than enough. So I imagine it'll be less, but this is for budgetary purposes, the 25 and the 75. And unfortunately, it's a requirement. It's not a Anthony Carr and DPW asking, trying to slide over the $100,000 to the vac truck or another vehicle. This is unfortunately, like most regulatory agencies, making things much more difficult for the right reasons, but nonetheless more difficult. Okay, so that stops at DPW, Eric and Mayor, Board, PD, Village Hall, Parks. I believe we can go back down to the water fund. We spoke about truck number 4. Okay, US EPA, lead service line inventory. What this is the EPA has developed a new rule. It's called LCRR. It's been around, but it's lead and copper rule revisions. So under the lead and copper rule, the village has, and every other municipality or smaller drinking water supplier has what's called a lead and copper monitoring plan. Amongst other plans that we have, but that's one of them. So what the EPA said is, okay, by October 16, 2024, we want to see the municipalities have a plan in place, not necessarily the work done, because it's impossible, but they wanted it, and they just pushed this regulation a year and a half ago. But every time the Westchester County Health Department comes in for our annual sanitary survey, which is actually for water, contrary to it being sanitary survey, when they come in and do our water system survey, they have a comment on there about the lead service line being due by October 16th. And what this inventory is basically self-explanatory. They want you to inventory, they being the EPA, but then they delegate the authority down to the local health department, which is the Westchester County Health Department. They want you to basically determine if a service line is lead, if it's galvanized steel and it needs to be replaced. Again, there's all different definitions, but you'd have to replace galvanized steel if it's downstream of lead or has a lead component in it. So that's not a good thing. And then
these service lines to people's homes.
Yes, Mayor, this is the pipe between, as you know, from the water
Right.
main to the building. Now, in the village of Pleasantville, like most utilities, although not all municipalities, we are responsible from the connection at the main, which is called the corporation stop. And the old play on words, and it's true, is that that you call it a corporation stop because that used to be the shutoff back in the day for a corporation or for a business entity where they could turn the water off. They didn't have the water valves in front of the houses where we can go and turn a key. So that's why they call it corporation stop. So it's really that little connection right between the service line and the main to what's called the curb stop. That's the valve we work when we need to turn somebody's water off, but really more if we need to do work on the line or something like that. So we own that, and that length could be anywhere from 5 feet to 50 feet to 30 feet, depending on the property. But then this private side is from that curb stop, that water shut-off valve into the house. They want you to inventory the whole thing. So now, because in the EPA's mind, well, if you have one part lead, the whole thing is lead. It doesn't matter. And unfortunately, what all 43 municipalities are scrambling to do now is, okay, well, we have decent records. How good are they? All right. Everybody's in kind of the same boat. Some records during certain decades are better, depending on who was doing it. But nobody has X-ray vision. And nobody's digging. For example, we have approximately 2,500 service lines in the village. So a couple things you could do, right? You could open trench from the service line in the street to the building and have 25 trenches, which would be just cost prohibitive and not feasible. You could say, okay, well, I don't want to dig the whole way. I'll dig a pit at the street and a pit by the house. And if they're the same material, then we're good. Well, you don't know if it transitions in the middle because you're not digging the rest of it up and the records may not be 100% accurate. So now what's happening is a lot of sub-consultants and contractors, if you will, people who specialize in this are working with consultants like Woodard & Curran, like Insight Engineering to say, hey, we could find out what it is without digging anything up. And there's all these different methods. One of them is you go inside a person's house, right? And you kind of open up the water meter and you send a little bullet from the inlet side of the meter. And, it measures the material's resistance to electrical resistance. And then obviously lead would have one value, copper would have a different value, steel would have a different value. So there's things like that. They have things that are kind of like X-ray-like. I'm not going to say it's X-ray vision, but it's like it's radar that penetrates through the ground. In either case, what's going to happen is October 16th is going to come and go. Us and the other 42 municipalities are not going to have any of this done because it's just nearly impossible. So how I see this playing out, as it has with other initiatives from the EPA and the DOH and Westchester County DEF, is the EPA is going to do one of two things. They're going to give leniency and say, okay, all right, let's see what everybody has, health department. Make sure you get your public water suppliers in line. Let's see what they have. And if it's reasonable, we'll give an extension for another 2 years. Or they might be grumpy and say, okay, and this is what I've seen also from the state DEC and the EPA. All right, DOH, we're going to hold you accountable. And if you don't want us to if you don't want to enter into consent order or administrative action with us, you have to force all the other municipalities to enter into consent order or decree with you to make sure they want to, that you have oversight over it.
Right.
And I've been on both sides of it, right? I've seen the municipalities say, okay, fine, we'll sign. We'll do things at year 1, 2, 3. Or I've seen other municipalities say, go scratch. We're going to still do everything, but we're not going to get into the arena with you and be beholden to where you're breathing on our neck. So I could see the advantages to both, but in either case,
all right. So we'll see how that develops.
Yeah, we don't know how it's going to shake out, but the $250,000 would cover someone like Woodard & Curran's cost to shepherd and oversee a sub-consultant who's going to offer a variety of techniques that will hopefully be the least invasive and most efficient in identifying what we have in the ground. And then hopefully by October, not hopefully, we'll be in contract with a consultant with a professional services agreement. And hopefully by then we'll have a plan at least identified of how we're going to go about and inventory the lead service lines. And I think I'm very confident from what I hear from my colleagues. If we do that, we'll be good.
All right. Then $600,000 in 2025 to begin the design of the water tank replacement. Is that?
Yes, Mayor. So last but certainly not least, water storage tank replacement project. This is coming up every time the health department visits us for our annual water service water system, and they put a comment in there. And as you know now, myself and Eric have had meetings with them where they wanted us to do a tank inspection, which is in progress. And then we have to give them a written report saying that the existing tanks are structurally sound and adequate until the village replaces the storage tanks in 2026, 2027. So they want that to document, so they're covered, and I get that too. So The water storage tanks replacement project, we have two 1 million gallon storage tanks. They're about 30 feet high, 77 feet in diameter. You've seen the timeline. I know Eric has shared that with the board, so we could kind of skip over that. The water storage tanks that we're looking to replace with, there's two options. There's concrete, which is more expensive, cracks, usually for bigger tanks, like 4 million gallons, you would go with concrete. But since we're a smaller system, i.e. we have two 1 million gallon tanks, we would likely be able to utilize a steel option that kind of has a glass coating around it. The advantage to that is it doesn't crack, right, if there's movement like concrete would. And they are erected very quickly and they're cheaper. Not because necessarily the material is substandard, just because it's a quicker way of doing it. And they're actually perfect for anything less than 3 million gallons for tanks. I've done both tanks. They both have their pros and cons. But with that being said, the $8 million is on the high end for the tanks, but that also includes all the transmission piping underground on the site. So the goal of the project is to remove the old tanks, put the two new tanks on, one first, tested, get that online, second one tested online, right, for redundancy. But then all the piping inside, known as your transmission piping, would all be replaced too. So it's not just a tank project. It's really the whole site would be renovated and improved and then given back to us. So $8 million, I think, is very conservative. It depends on how aggressive the contractors are. We don't know what's going to happen when we bid it out in 2026, 2027. But I do think if we go with the steel tanks, you could probably shave $1 million or $2 million potentially off that number. But again, we want to get the consultant on board to give us our options, give us the alternatives, do a deeper dive. So for now, 8's good. And then the $600,000, I imagine for a consulting fee, probably going to come in the range of $400,000 to $600,000, because every consultant's going to do the same thing. They're going to figure out the conceptual construction cost, and they're going to give you a number that's 8 to 12% of that, or 8 to 14, depending.
Right.
So
does the chlorine system remains? That's relatively new.
Yes, Mayor.
Okay.
The booster station is newer.
Yeah.
Yes, and that will remain.
Okay, great. All right. So we're through capital for the items in your bailiwick, right?
Yes, sir.
All right.
May I ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
I just have Anthony's Michael. I have a question about the Nanhagen Brook Wall
Yes.
estimated cost, and it comes from a position of ignorance, but also it's a sort of question that we will get asked because the price tag is so big. And so for someone who's not an engineer, can you help me understand why it's $1.5 million?
Well, it's $1.5 million. I'll tell you for a few reasons, Trustee Pepperidge. So one is the soft cost, right? So there's built into that number, there's 300, Eric, I believe the soft cost is in there, correct? Right, which is about 340. Okay, so that's soft cost. And that brings you to, that also includes construction oversight. So that's why that 340 is a bit on the higher end. It assumes a several month construction period. But the wall itself, estimates are about $1,000 a linear foot for the type of system we're looking at. So what the consultant also did say that I didn't mention earlier is when we first kind of spitball about different options, we thought, okay, option one for replacement would be modular units, right? Big concrete block, they're called Ready Rock. That's just a brand. There's other brands that are equivalent, but they're there's these precast modular units that stack together and they interlock. And sometimes they interlock just by the weight of themselves on top of each other, or they have a grid that goes back into the earth and the weight of the soil kind of holds the grid up as you build it up, and it kind of retains the wall into the slope, if you will, and the embankment. Regardless, that modular system, is going to vary in size, but it's still going to be the same thing. Precast block units, no matter how big the blocks are, right? And you typically get them to look like stone if you're looking for aesthetics, which we are in this case. So they're kind of expensive just because there's an aesthetic piece to it. The contractor's also working in water. So there's going to be dewatering, there's going to be pumping, there's going to be diverting potentially of the stream. And there's only certain times of the year, I bet the DEC is going to let us work in that stream, which kind of ties into the pool project and this project. So there's a little bit of logistics and scheduling. There's dewatering. Any time you're working in water, it's a little bit harder. The stone itself, the Ready Rocks, everything has gone up in COVID, 10 to 25% for markup. And then on top of that too, the option of doing some spot repairs is pretty much off the table. I learned when I had this discussion with the consultant early in the week. So we thought maybe, okay, there's a few sections where we could take the stones out, put some mortar inside, call it a dry stack wall, and put the stones back, reset them and replace them. But the wall is so deteriorated that if you try doing that, you're not really there's no bite. If you put back the same stones, there's no guarantee that the other stones around it aren't going to move and you're going to have the same problem. So that approach takes off kind of a less costly option. So now we have to go with, if you see sections of the wall, multiple sections in 200 feet, you would do sections at a time versus spot repairs. So again, the expense comes from the type of equipment, right? It's not just a traditional excavator. You're gonna have to pick and set these units because they're heavy with a crane. And again, the pumping and the dewatering. That's why working in Brooks for walls, rule of thumb, at least $1,000 to $1,500 a linear foot, and that's unfortunately what contractors know they can charge the public and private entities.
All right, thank you.
So we've got capital now, back to the budget. Is that?
Yes, I think we're good. Yes, we're good with the capital. I'll send a summary email of some of the milestone dates for these projects too, so everyone could see, and I'll also circulate the Clark Street drainage improvements drawings.
All right, great. Thanks for that. So now we got to zip through this in rocket fast time. Okay, can we?
All right. I think so.
So street administration is all pretty straightforward here, right?
Yes, that's basically myself and my senior office assistant's items. My car, Village's car that I use, not my car. My conference memberships, vacation. This is really myself.
Right, and nothing significant change from last year. So
no, and only thing that changed, Mayor and Board, is prior to me coming on board, you had detail on here, which I know is something Eric and Noreen worked to introduce, which is great because I'm used to having this. All I did was last year was the heavy lift. I tweaked everything, made it so that this year would be more of a quicker flow and easy dialogue, and just change maybe the little things that
great.
So everything there is what it is.
Software, very straightforward. You got AutoCAD through 2025. Is that the case?
It's AutoCAD 2020, but every year or two there's a license renewal, and we're trying to get an answer if next year is our renewal.
Right.
So that's what that is.
And the plotter died, and you don't have one?
Yes.
Do you want one?
I would save the money on the plotter. Some people would argue with me on that, but honestly, everything's PDF, and it's better to submit, and I can go to Search Speedy if I really need hard copies.
All right, great. All right, so street maintenance again is contractual.
Yes, all the 100 items are really salary.
Right.
I know Noreen and Eric really handle that. The one thing you will notice is the overtime. We always keep a little bit of overtime there for the street maintenance if there's there's things that we want to keep clean with downtown. So there's a little bit of an aesthetic value there.
Why is the number smaller for summer and spring and summer part-time?
Let me see.
It's higher than the original 2024, but
what happened was this year we had to bring a part-timer on board, Bryce DeFalco. We brought him back. He was summer help last year because we had Mike Baranowski, our fleet foreman. He was out. He was on medical leave, and then the fleet foreman was out. The assistant fleet foreman stepped into that role, and basically we had a shortage of personnel, and we had to keep Bryce DeFalco for 4 to 6 weeks, and again at $16.50 an hour. So he was basically he was like a part-time full-timer for 6 weeks to bridge the gap for the resources. We had to do a shuffle.
Understood. So that's why that number changed.
That's the only reason why it was not fine. Yes.
Okay, great. So the line for furnish and install traffic control devices, line 200, is that potentially the line that would change based on what we get back from this detailed investigation of the Bedford Road lights?
This is different, Mayor. This is for basically we wanted to work with the board and the pedestrian committee to identify some pedestrian safety measures. We don't know what they're going to be yet. This line, for example, last year had Sunnyside and Meadow, the rapid reflected flashing beacon, but we decided not to do that. So this line is basically reserved for smaller kind of isolated, localized areas where we might want to put a flashing light with a stop sign with a solar panel. So we don't know what those locations are yet. And there might be ideas that the pedestrian committee has that we want to collaborate with them and locations that we don't know yet. So it's kind of a placeholder, which is why it said TBD.
Okay.
Normally we put locations and detail, but it just doesn't exist yet.
All right. So 406 to 444, I don't see anything of any note.
No, I mean,
Such-
patching material, outside services are standard. They're broken up there. Traffic signs, radio repairs. That's the radios and the vehicles.
Right?
Yeah, patching material, concrete, asphalt, sand.
All right, central garage, again, contractual, modest amount of overtime. Conference and training, supplies similar to recent years,
Yes.
maintenance contracts, utilities.
Yeah, the maintenance contracts again, Kinsley is the generator, services, DP Wolf does our HVAC and our heating and
Mhm.
cooling system, so sometimes we have problems with that.
So
Yes,
is that, I noticed the village hall generator is on the capital list for replacement. The DPW garage generator is a bit newer, but by no means new. Is it a long-term replacement problem or is it okay?
it's okay for now. We've asked Kinsley, I've been there and I've asked Mike to ask Kinsley and they said, no, for now, there's no no red flags and no major
Okay.
signs. We probably should start thinking about that for out years. But as far as we know now, we cycle our generator on every week. So everything's working as intended there.
Do the solar panels on the roof do much for us?
That's a good question. I've seen the inverters. I've seen all the, I didn't realize we have a whole room full of cabinets for the solar panels. I don't, to be honest with you, Mayor, I don't know what the cost savings of the Delta is when we go off the grid and we use the, we could certainly delve into that. I'd have to look at through the electric bill.
Right. All right, vehicle repair and maintenance bumped up a bit. Material cost escalation, new rack body and lift gate for vehicle 19.
Yes, that was the driver. So a rack body truck, for those who don't know, basically it's a open, it's almost like a dump truck, but it doesn't have solid walls. They have kind of like split rails around the side. They're metal, obviously, but they look like rails. But they call it, and then they have racks built into it, which is why they call it a rack body, because you could put tools and stuff in there, kind of standing up vertically. But it looks like almost like a split guide rail fence around the truck. So that's the rack body. The problem is the rack body and the lift gate. So when you want to put a generator in the back, it has a nice lift where you press a button, you toggle it down, it drops the lift, right? You put whatever you want on there, it lifts it back up. Problem is the lift is rotting and the where it bolts, where the lift bolts to the body is also rotting. So you can't replace one without the other. So it's a package deal. But that's really the difference from last year to this year.
Okay.
And we only have one rack body truck, by the way, which is why we would need that replaced.
Okay, so the rest of that line looks pretty straightforward. Uniforms, jackets, software expense, pretty much the same as before, all the vehicle diagnostic stuff.
Yes, and the jackets are contractual thing that every other year. This year, there's no jackets. This upcoming fiscal year, there's no jackets. So that's why you don't see anything in there.
Okay. Snow removal, leave it where it was. Looks like we'll end up a bit of a savings this year, right?
Yes, it will go back to the good old general fund.
So pre-wetting salt spreader system, adding another vehicle that has the capacity to do that. Is that what this is?
Yes, the truck 20, the 2017 F550 dump truck, our current salt spreader. So we have a salt spreader there, but what it doesn't do is what a pre-wetting system is, as the salt comes out of the spreader, it spins, right? There's a spinner in there, and that's all connected and controlled by the driver in the truck, right? And you can go at higher levels. You could put down, 400 pounds per lane miles, 600. You could basically change the rate at which the salt is applied. Before the salt goes down, as the rock salt is coming out, the traditional rock salt, what we do, and what a lot of people do, and it's a great practice, it's tried and true, we spray it with liquid calcium chloride, which is what we buy. Now, you've probably heard there's liquid magnesium chloride, there's this calcium chloride. Not getting into the science, magnesium, I believe, could melt down to a slightly lower temperature than calcium, but and I'm talking like minus 20 degrees versus calcium, which is like minus 15. So we're not in the parts of the country where we need to really worry about that difference. But calcium chloride is also supposed to be a little bit less invasive on concrete and asphalt too. So there's pros and cons to both of them. But anyway, as the salt comes out of the spreader, we spray this liquid, and what it does is it kind of gives the salt some extra melting ability, but it also kind of sticks to the salt almost like gum or like molasses. And when we place the salt on the road, it reduces the bounce and the scatter of the salt, which means you're losing less salt to the gutter line or to the curb, to the face of the curb, which is
right.
traditionally what happens. So pre-wetting gives you more melting ability and kind of keeps the salt a little bit more in place on the middle and off middle of the road, which is what usually than the end. So that's
All right.
that's the science.
Sounds like it's worth $13,000. So
Yes.
the rest of it looks pretty straightforward. Nothing major on this next two lines. Metered parking, all pretty routine.
Yep, same
right?
thing, Mayor. We send out about 20 to 30. I think this year was actually 25 parking heads for repair.
Right.
We do that. It's not like this kind of like a quiet item over there. You know, we do.
Again, nothing to worry about at the moment, but at some point it'd be nice to take some of the bodies of the meters and get them refinished.
I agree. I know we talked about that.
Do they powder coat them? I don't know what they do, but some of them are getting kind of beat up.
Understood.
Again, a discussion for another time.
Understood. So this line item for sanitary sewer, Mayor and Board, this jumped up really in the outside services. So it's all the same items as last year. Duke's root control. They basically put a chemical additive into the sanitary sewer. They flush it and it burns the tree roots. Sometimes Duke's goes in and they actually cut the roots out a little bit, but they add a chemical agent that cleans it. The second item is emergency cleaning when we need a vendor like Fred Cook, who has the vac truck, who charges us, a pretty penny for a few hours of work. That's what that second line item is. That's the $15,000. And then what the $28,000 is, we've had a lot of success working with Green Mountain. As you know, we've and if you don't, we've trenchless. We've performed trenchless rehabilitation on 16 9 manholes and then another 15. So we've done about 25 manholes now to date, or 24 manholes to date, where basically the contractor goes in, they clean the manhole wall. They call that kind of pre-inspection or pre-cleaning, and then they go and they put a half inch of the super strong cement that basically gives you a new manhole in place without having to dig the road up, without having to bypass the manhole, because obviously if you have to replace the manhole, the sewage still has to get from point A to point B. So it eliminates digging, pumps, downtime. We started out small. First, we did $10,000 or $12,000. Then we just recently did about $26,000 in the Virginia Road area, at Washington Avenue. So it's definitely something that contributes towards the village's I&I initiative.
So the increase is we're doing more, or it's just these services are all costing that much more?
We would be doing the same that we did. So we've done 2 rounds of manhole lining. The first round was, I think, only like $12,000. It was a smaller amount. The second round was $26,000. And I know for $26,000, we can get about 250 vertical feet of manhole. So, from the top to the bottom. So we wanted to keep that number at around the same and try to do another 15, 20 in upcoming years. So we're trying to build that program. The village has not done trenchless rehabilitation of manholes, which again is a big initiative towards reducing inflow and infiltration. Because as you know, a lot of the old manholes are brick, they're mortar, they're degraded. So a lot of water and rainwater gets in there and contributes to the I&I. So it's something that when the Westchester County DEF comes back and says, hey, what have you been doing to reduce and eliminate I&I in your system? We could say that we've been doing the manhole program. Now, before my time, Steve Johnson had done a lot of pipelining. So a lot of the pipes in the village, sewer pipes, I think almost all of them are lined with a cured in place liner, which is like a hard sock that becomes the new pipe inside the old pipe. So you're good with the lining, but we need to focus on the manholes.
Understood. All right, street cleaning and leaf collection are all pretty routine.
Yes.
EV charge stations. Maintenance contracts.
Yeah, so as you know, right now we have 2 charging stations in Memorial Plaza, and we have 1 dual station in the Wheeler Avenue lot, which actually on Monday, Con Edison is coming for their final site inspection and work acceptance. So pending no issues, because the units are energized and functional and connected with the help of Eric and Alyssa. Thank you for that. Everybody had their part in that in the EV charging station at Wheeler Avenue, but Con Edison certainly makes you work for that reimbursement, and
Where's it?
they require a lot.
over here
Oh, okay.
behind Lucy's. Okay, so So all in, the EV software, et cetera, all in, we've got now 6 heads, right?
Wait,
When
is the
these
one
are-
behind Lucy's for the police or?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes, so
It's costing us $15,680 a year.
yes, and right now we have 6, correct, Mayor? We have two dual charging stations at Memorial, so that's 4. 2
Right.
more at the lot in Wheeler Avenue. And that lot, you know, we've spoke to PD, we spoke to Eric, we coordinated. It is for PD vehicles, but obviously if there's another municipal vehicle or official vehicle that needs to be plugged in, there's obviously
Right.
we'll be able to charge up too.
Right.
But
It's just something we got to keep our eye on with the goal of ultimately having more at some point in time.
Yeah, we should see if maybe we could get some of that offset too.
Right.
yeah,
So-
we Eric had asked me, Eric and we didn't get a chance to talk about many things we spoke about this morning, but you had asked if we have the potential to expand the EV charging stations at the Wheeler Avenue lot. And based on the 200 amp overhead service that we got installed from Con Edison, and based on the amperage of this current dual charging station, we could likely accommodate one more dual EV charging station at the Wheeler
Right.
Avenue lot, if and when the village wants to embark on that venture.
All right. So water administration, conference training, whatever all those numbers are.
Right, that's
Contractual
the
and essentially
salaries,
the same. Yeah.
vacation buyback, right, conference
Right.
training,
Right.
copy machine engineering, that's for small in-house projects if we need assistance or I need assistance.
Understood. Software support, the billing system, da 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 da.
Yes, and I know Eric and Noreen are working with the vendor on that and testing import-export files for the meter. So
Okay.
Noreen and Eric could speak better to this, but our new meter billing system should be up in the next few months, which is why the money was moved.
Yeah. All right. It's 8:01, so we're at the witching hour here.
All right,
Um,
all right.
I love this,
Yeah.
Peter.
So
I want it to be his birthday every week.
the outside service line 425 on the page I'm on now.
Yes,
Bumped way up this year and back down to its
yes,
sort
yes.
of.
It's going to resume back to blue sky conditions. The reason why it was up higher this year, Mayor and Board, is we did a lot of work that was on the books. And you probably remember me talking about it last year and during the year on the Apple Hill water meter pit. So we
I recall, yeah.
replaced valves, we replaced meters, we've maintained all the components we had to maintain. We put some extra belts and suspenders in there. And I'm happy to say that as of a few months ago, the 2 header pipes that were in the Apple Hill meter pit, there was a main and a branch header. We were only using the branch header probably for the last 10 to 12 years. The main was just off. So if something happens to that one branch header inside the pit,
Yeah.
the village would have no water,
Okay.
temporarily. So
All right,
anyway,
so we're back next
we're
year
back.
to a more
it's
normal
new,
number.
everything's refurbished, everything's new. You should have no problems for a very long time in the Apple Hill
Okay.
meter.
All right, great.
All right.
Water distribution, that's all pretty much the
Supplies.
same as
Right, we asked for
always.
some new equipment, metal detector, jackhammer, maintenance
Supplies drop
contracts.
back again, line 406 drops back a bit, it was up
Yes.
this year.
Yes,
Vehicle repair and maintenance.
right. We don't anticipate much maintenance.
So what's that 425 line, the outside service was way
Yes.
up this year?
Yes, that was, again, in a nutshell, that was the new 3 valves that we installed in July of 2023 in front of Jacob Burns on Manville Road by Washington
Right.
Avenue.
Yes.
All right.
We bought the supplies, but we also paid a contractor to install everything. So that's where that outside service came from.
Right.
That was $25,000, but then there was
Yeah.
other things in Nanny Hagen Brook. There was other repairs on Locust. There were a number of repairs that pushed that number way up.
Right. It's always something,
Yes, but that'll
always
go back to-
something.
That'll go back to normal.
And then the filtration plant is a contractual arrangement, although affected by usage.
We got the letter from Commissioner Bart Carey. I reviewed it in detail. Eric looked at it too. Noreen looked at it. And, the numbers are what they are. And there's not really much of an increase, which is good.
Okay. Sanitation is all pretty straightforward.
Yeah, there's nothing blaring on the refuse fund.
Yeah, certainly not. All right, on the revenue side, obviously it's just street opening permits. You never know exactly what's going to be. Similar number.
Same thing, residential, all the water sales, they're just based on prior year projection, prior year actuals, and then projections. with a conservative approach. I mean, I worked with Noreen,
Yeah.
Eric on that. We didn't overinflate the revenues. They're
Right.
conservative.
Boy, we are funding the whole village on sale of scrap metal. $300.
By the way, just when it comes to water rates real quick, we're proposing to increase water rates by 2%. When we have the rate study in place, we'll have, more of a definitive.
And that will help stabilize things and set us up for the larger expenses soon to come,
Yes.
right?
Yes,
You may
yes.
recall, we went through, I think, almost 4 or 5 years where there was a 0%
Yeah, right.
increase to water rates, so kind of catching up.
All right, we got through it. It's 8:05. That's pretty good.
All right, and
Thank
one
you.
thing, Mayor, the water rate study and board, we will be before, Eric and myself will be before the board in April to discuss the report. Draft report should be done by end of March, and the final report should be finished in April. So at some point in April, you'll see us to talk about the water rate and audit, water rate study and the
All
audit.
Great.
All right.
Well, thank you, Anthony Carr. Really happy day when you walked into our realm, and you've been doing a great job for us
Oh,
in so many different areas.
thank you.
And it's noticed not only by all of us, but by residents who have commented to that effect. So thank you, sir.
I appreciate it, and the feeling's mutual.
Absolutely.
Great. All right. Have a good night.
You too, and happy birthday. And to
Thank
echo
you.
what the other trustee said, I wish it was your birthday every budget season. On DPW, on DPW.
Yeah, right.
I mean,
DPW.
if it weren't my birthday, we'd have knocked you off 20-25%.
I figured, I know, I would have got hammered, I know.
Dream on, Carr. You'll have a new truck over my dead body. All right, signing off.
All right, thank you
Thank
very
you.
much, everyone. Have a good
Bye.
night. Take care.